Yeah, well, what do you expect actually in particular out of Nerchio here? Like you're the expert guy, right?
A little bit. We'll talk about it, Johan. Let's go ahead and introduce these awesome guys. First, on the right bottom side of Asset Plant, the main base of the Polish Zerg player, it is Nerchio.
And his opponent in the red playing Protoss, it is Classic.
I'm gonna go with what InControl said earlier today. When it comes to Nerchio in general, Nerchio is not a crazy Zerg, right? He's not looking at this being like, Classic is very good. You know what? I'm gonna go for some absolutely crazy builds that I normally never do. No, you know what you can expect with Nerchio. It's gonna be solid, straight up play, and he's just gonna try to play better against, in my opinion, the best Protoss player in the world. And I don't know if I like that, Johan.
Yeah, what I meant to say, by the way, is as you're in the expert, is that you play a lot of ladder on the European ladder, and like you're pretty high MMR. Do you meet Nerchio occasionally? And
once in a blue moon, if there's like no one else around the level of Nerchio, you know, where the Battlenet goes to the deep graves and it's like, let's grab one of these garbage players, you know, and then Arthur gets his 2 MMR when he beats me. It doesn't happen very often, but Nerchio is not a crazy Zerg. He's a pretty straightforward Zerg. We know that he doesn't particularly love this matchup. Every now and then you see some tweets whenever Protoss wins again. You get a couple XDs out of him. You know how it is. I'm worried, but I really hope, Johan, that he positively surprises us here with some sharp timings, perhaps, because if he just sits back, tries to get out lurkers and stuff, I just don't think that's the way you want to go against Classic.
Yeah, and I think we had Showtime talk about in the interview on how the Korean Zergs, they like to play very aggressive, and they don't like to take it to the late game. I feel like Nerchio is kind of in between. He won't necessarily go all out and play ultra aggressive, but he also, I don't think, appreciates the late game all that much. Maybe perhaps as much as the Korean Zerg. So we'll see how that translates. We know a few things about Nerchio in that he's very good with drops, for example, which is very rare. Like not many Zergs actually try for those. The last one that did, well, met a couple of Phoenixes earlier when Showtime somehow found them.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought it up. I think that is trademark ZVP when it comes to Nerchio. Nerchio is that type of Zerg that loves to make a lot of roaches, a lot of Hydras, and then eventually he's going to fly 6 drop lords into your base, unload all of those Hydras. I think that's a style that he loves to play. Now, obviously, that's very hard to go for if your opponent has 5-6 Phoenixes out. I'm expecting Classic to go for a rather standard approach here of, or maybe 1 Phoenix and an Oracle and try to pick off a couple drones and just take the game from there. I think trademark Protoss against Zerg for Classic is that he moves out with the 2-3 Immortals, 2 Archons, a couple Gateway units and a War Prism, and he is so freaking good with those kind of
You don't think a second Stargate could happen here?
I don't think Classic
is low-key for sure one of your viewers. Like I just know it from watching his games.
Well, I don't think he's taking notes if that's the case though, Johan. That's maybe some late-night entertainment for him to fall asleep to, but nothing else. Now, I feel like Classic is more of a Robo kind of guy. He loves his Storm, loves the Archons, loves the Immortals. He's not too much of the mass Phoenix into carriers.
Yeah, we have an Oracle now queued up after the initial Phoenix, which is going to clean that one Overload. So no info really taken by Nerchio here early on. Which, I mean, he knows that there's a Stargate, but not knowing what the follow-up could be. You know, we've seen very, very dangerous attacks with a lot of glaive adepts killing everything left and right. So we'll have to see exactly what Classic wants to go into behind this. I gotta say, I was very impressed with Classic in his recent series against Dark when he reached a big army, including like stuff like Disruptors and all that. I feel like the control is just really, really good from all of these players nowadays.
Yeah, Classic is just an amazing Protoss, man. You look at his year, and I think in the first 3-4 months of the year, without a doubt, the best Protoss player in the world. And then he did hit a little summer slump. I went over it yesterday. A couple tournaments, he got so close to winning, but he didn't really close one tournament out. It was always semifinals or even the final. And I think it bothered him a little bit. It put him in a minor summer slump, but I believe he's back. And like you said, the control of those big armies, all the spellcasters, that's just where he's in his element, man. And he's so freaking good with it.
Yeah, Templar Archives actually being dropped down here, so hinting at maybe a charged out Archon composition here going down the line.
Could also,
Painting Nest going down for Nerchio.
yeah, could also just be an Archon harass immediately, right? Like putting 2 Archons inside of that Warp Prism, be active on the other side of the map, and then he's gonna follow it up with one of those trademark classic pushes, a couple of sentries, a couple gateway units in Immortal or 2 or 3. So far, I mean, not a lot of damage done, but he is kind of disrupting the economy of Nerchio a tiny bit.
Actually, Nerchio's defense was really on point, but he kind of maybe neglected drone production. Maybe he's getting 22 links right now.
This could be some good old Hydra Link play. I mean, Nerchio skipped the Baneling Nest, skipped the Roach Warren as far as I can see.
He maybe wants to try and cancel the 3rd base, which he knows he's going down right about now.
There's a chance that he just doesn't make any drones anymore at all, that he just goes all out. I mean, he's making a few more Overlords. Just some good old Hydra Link. Obviously, it's very important for Classic that he figures this out sooner than later, because if you play against a style like this, you need to stop building workers as Protoss at one point. A shield battery or 2 is very useful. He's got to be very careful. If he ends up losing the Prism and these Archons, Johan, Classic could be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, you can expect his control to be pretty good, though. He's trying to take a lot of damage.
No!
Oh, whoo-hoo! He almost flew right back into the squints here.
That's not a good start at all. Lost an Archon, took a lot of damage on the Warp Prism.
I think he meant to select the Phoenix maybe or something, and maybe he selected both units by accident.
That was sloppy. That was not good. I mean, Nerchio could absolutely produce more units. He is throwing down an Evolution Chamber, so there is a chance that he's heading towards a +1 missile attacks. Oh, there is a Baneling now, so he's gonna morph a couple of Zerglings into Banes now. Nerchio seems like he just wanted to get the Hydras out as quickly as possible to make sure he wouldn't struggle with this Warp Prism.
Yeah, Nerchio is still adding drones, but I mean, if we look at the Walker count, he's playing catch-up. You know, usually it's the other way around, so it feels like he's really not where he would like to be here at right now in this game. And Classics, if he can set up that 3rd base comfortably, and I mean, he's already pretty much done that here, he's going to be in a pretty good spot, I feel, in this game.
But it's a matter of seconds before Nerchio marches to the other side of the map, I believe. I really think there is a good chance that he's going to spread a couple too much forward. I know he just lost a few, but he's going to start being aggressive soon, Johan. Like, Nerchio is not sitting on 58 drones because he doesn't know how to build drones. No, he's sitting on this amount of drones because he's not chrono boosting. He's pumping out a lot of units. He's making drones now, but I'd love to see Nerchio do something with this big army that he's currently sitting on.
Very good job clearing out a lot of this creep here, actually, from Classic. When he eventually reaches, you know, 150 to 170 supply, that's usually when you would want to move across the map and go for a big attack. And having pushed back the creep so far, all the way to the base of Nerchio, that's going to help a lot for him to get a good engagement where there's not going to be, I guess, as much speed and vision for Nerchio to really help with that.
Kind of a slow game so far. Maybe a little bit of a shaky start for Classic as well.
What's the unit stab lost, actually?
I mean, an Archon went down and a couple Links, I guess, but that's about it. Definitely not an explosive start to this PvZ series, but I think that is very nice for Nerchio, who comes in here as a clear underdog. So it's always nice to find some rhythm 8-9 minutes into the game and feel like, oh, you know what? This was actually pretty good so far. I picked off 2 expensive units. I really didn't lose much myself, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Storm is close to finishing up. Classic is already going up to 4 bases. The point that you made earlier about Classic going up to 3 bases, being even in workers for that long into the game, still stands.
Yeah.
This is the first real interesting part of this game. 9 Swarmos, Johan.
Yeah. Nerchio definitely willing to kind of sit back and... I mean, when I see Swarmos at this stage in the game and both players taking the 4th base, I'm like, okay, well, we're pretty much going to split the map. And there's going to be attacks a little bit everywhere. Both players are going to have to defend and attack appropriately, try not to overextend, which Swarmos are really great for that. But I feel like eventually when Classic, like, he's in a spot in this game where if he gets 170 supply and moves across the map, it's going to be so hard for Nerchio to hold on against that massive army of Classic, which is going to have +2 attack as well soon.
Yeah, I know that this looks like a rather standard PvZ so far, but I'm actually quite confused about how this game has developed. Nerchio made a lot of units early on, but it was purely for defensive purposes. He did not try to be aggressive with it. Then he got a little bit of everything. He's getting a bunch of Hydras. Now he's going for Swarmos, but at the same time he's going for melee upgrades. Let's see if these Locusts get anything done. They did pick off 1 High Templar, so that's obviously always nice, but I think that Nerchio is hoping for a lot more. Gets an Archon there as well. That's not bad.
Yeah, it looks like Nerchio actually... He has no intention of splitting the map. I don't think he's going for half. He only made +1 melee attack upgrade, not even the +2. He's just going for it here. He made Swarmos to synergize with his army so that the Banelings maybe could connect. And he's going for this massive attack. It's a huge commitment. This has to work or he's gonna fall behind, especially if he starts on losing drones back at home, and he's losing a lot of them right now.
Yeah, getting a Nexus is obviously awesome. He got a couple of probes as well and a few High Templars and Archon, but he's taking a lot of damage. Look at the sentry. Classic is gonna try to force field Nerchio outside of his main base, and that means that Nerchio is now in danger of losing this lair, maybe the spawning pool, maybe the Hydra then. This is very painful.
Yeah, but Nerchio still has so many units here across the map, sending in the Locust to try and deal with his Immortals. He needs... I think, yeah, I mean, he has to go for it now more than ever. He has to keep on attacking. He's going to be defending here on this side of the map. Going to save that hatchery. He needs to move across the map and try and end this right now because he's lost so much of his mining here.
That was sloppy though by Classic. He messed up the force field. That's why more Hydras were able to squeeze into the main base. Nerchio picks up that Prism as well. He gets the sentries. That was very easy for Classic to just keep force fielding that ramp. There are no roaches, no ravages, nothing to break those force fields. And I think that Classic could have easily got the Hydra then there as well. Maybe a few more of those Hydras that were spawning in the main base. That was an expensive misclick for Classic because now he ends up losing all those units. The War Prism as well, and now he has to worry about the next wave of Locusts coming in.
And look at this supply, rolling 93 army to 63, throwing away one of his Immortals. What are you doing? What's
Classic
going on?
is looking a little sloppy so far.
Yeah.
A couple of uncharacteristic mistakes. He's going to be forced to cancel this Nexus one more time. He does still have a nice backbone of Immortals in his main army, and he's still very active. I love seeing how active Classic is with these Zealots, even though he's under a lot of pressure. But he's been making very expensive misclicks.
Go home.
On creep, this is so dangerous though. I mean, he's getting a couple of Hydras, but it's hard to land the perfect storms on creep.
Nerchio saved that hatchery on the right-hand side, but he's very low on hit points right now. Could definitely get sniped here in the near future. I still think he needs to keep up with the siege. He's remaking Lair, which is already kind of about to complete here in a second. I mean, 70 workers to 72. It feels like Classic. If he can secure that fourth base, he'd be in a good spot.
I am positively surprised by this game coming out of Nerchio so far. I think Nerchio has been looking really good. He's been looking solid. This hatch will go down, but that's just a single hatch for 4 Zealots. Classic is not that rich that he can throw away wave after wave of Zealots. Those things hurt Classic as well.
8 more Swarmos. That's going to be so many Locusts, and because Nerchio has kept Classic lower on the supply counts. Look, 124 to 71 in army. Just so far ahead. Obviously, the Swarmos is a unit that takes a lot of supply. But like I said, there's going to be so many Locusts to synergize with the Banelings. And Hydra is so smart for Nerchio to stop sieging the fourth base and instead go for the third. He's going to start on killing a lot of probes there. And I think Classic is now the one that's going to be marching across the map to try and put an end to this.
But he's going to have to go so deep on creep, and I really feel that every wave of Locusts is truly going to hurt. Classic is going to try to win the game with his army, or at least do an insane amount of damage. But I don't know if he has the numbers here, yo, and the High Templars are very far forward. Already burned through a couple of these storms. Is this an army that can end the game? I have a hard time believing it can.
Yeah, Nerchio is running home with some of these units. He left the rest sniping that Nexus here at the top. Some big storms landing on top of his army, but it feels like this army of Classic might be about to run out of steam here, especially with the next wave of Locusts potentially coming in. They can't be killing everything at the same time, so either they kill the Hydralisk and then the Locusts will come back in, or they will kill the Swarmos, but then the Hydralisk will deal with these Immortals. Classic really making the most of the situation though. He's caught up in army supply, he's got +3 attack completed now. Can he do this?
Yeah, the next wave of Locusts, like you said, a couple of Zealots do come in from the north side, and suddenly Nerchio is plummeting in supplies. He lost all of the Hydras on the other side of the map. It seemed like such a risky call for Classic, but he's actually making it work, Johan. He dropped good storms, he kept the Archons alive, and now he's hunting down these Swarmos. GG. Classic, even though he was down 40-50 supply when he stepped on creep, he ends up winning this game.
That was insane. Perfect micro and decision making here with this big push at the end, landed some huge storms. And I thought that with the army that was going to come back in for the defense for Nerchio, he was going to be fine back at home, but I guess maybe that's because if we were the Protoss, that's what would have happened. But in this case, it worked out pretty well.
Classic takes the 1-0 lead, but I must say, Johan, I'm not super convinced. I expected better and above all, much cleaner play from Classic. Of course, a win is a win, and it's fantastic to start your global finals run with a 1-0 lead in your first best of 3 of the day, but, you know, that Archon arrest did not look as good as it's supposed to be. Yeah. I think the mid-game was a little bit shaky as well, missing that force field on the ramp into the main base. There were a lot of moments where Classic could have gotten way more value out of his units, but as Vin Diesel said, doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. And as Jeff would say, it's all about family. But I guess that's not too relevant right now.
He threw away an immortal. That's maybe what surprised me the most. Like, it's very uncharacteristic, you know, of a player of this caliber to kind of have that happen. But yeah, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit to get used to, you know, everything at the tournaments, get in the zone.
The one thing I did love from the way that Classic played that game is that even though he was under a lot of pressure and Nerchio had a big army of Hydra Link Bane, and Nerchio's disgusted with that Protoss performance.
Yeah.
And there were Locusts coming at him. Instead of just focusing only on his defenses, he's counterattacking with Zealots into the main base with a Warp Prism. He's running Zealots towards the fort base of Nerchio as well. And that's the kind of stuff that separates good players from the best. That even though he's under so much pressure, he is still thinking about ways on how to deal damage on the other side of the map. And I really believe that hurting the economy in the way that he did is maybe what tipped this game in the end into Classic's favor.
I think it's very hard for Nerchio after this as well to think back on that game and be like, yeah, no, he just played like much better and he won it. A lot of the time as a pro gamer here after a game like this, you're going to be thinking, I should have won this. I cannot believe I just lost this.
No, I absolutely believe that's what Nerchio is thinking right now, and I think that explains the little handshake we saw there too. Either way, let's get ready for Game 2 between these two awesome players, as we have been loading in to Lost and Found. On the right top side, the Polish Zerg, representing Iron Chain, it is Nerchio.
His opponents in the reds playing Protoss, it is Classic.
Nerchio's our only Polish representative this year, Todd. At the global finals, of course, in the previous years, we had Elazer there as well. Elazer having phenomenal runs into the quarterfinals, into the semifinals even in 2016. I mean, Poland overall, I think a country with a strong tradition in RTS games. They were good in a lot of games. A great StarCraft 2 scene. And that Brood War scene, Johan, Tasteless told me it was really up there as well.
I feel like I've heard that before, yeah.
Yeah, Tasteless loved that Polish Brood War scene, man. Like, I've never followed it, but I feel like I'm in touch with it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's one of the few things that I know about somehow. Thanks to Tasteless, Uncle Tasteless, keeping us posted. So, Classic opening with a gateway down the ramp here on Lost and Found. Fairly standard. You want to start walking on that wall pretty early to make sure you're safe. And it feels like these are two players from which you don't expect crazy stuff. You mentioned it, it's like it's a lot of the time going to be fairly standard. Maybe from the mid game is like where they will choose their composition and how aggressive they want to be, but a lot of the time they're just kind of want to sit back. Nerchio's choice of the Swarmus, I feel like actually last game was pretty good. Again, like he almost made it work. It's just the Zealot harassment came at the exact... If it had been earlier, I think it would have been bad. Later, it would have been bad. It was just perfectly timed. And the fact that he sniped the lair and stuff, and I guess he prevented Nerchio from getting into this comfort zone where he was just sieging comfortably across the map.
It wouldn't have been pretty, but I would have loved to see Nerchio just go for a Hydra Ling attack. If you defend that Warp Prism opening the way he did, he also took no damage against the Phoenix and the Oracle. If you then pick off an Archon, defending a Hydra Ling attack on a map like Acid Plant can actually become very, very tricky. So even though those games are obviously a little bit ugly, I would have loved to see if that could potentially work.
What do you think about the Locust actually? Because he sent Locusts like in few small waves. Instead of doing one big wave, which has its upside, right? Because if you send one big wave and Storm lands and they all die, then obviously you don't have anything left to defend. But at the same time, it was like the army of Classic was big enough that a few small waves of Locusts were not really that threatening to his army.
Yeah, I like the way that Nerchio played it, because I think he got a couple of good trades of it. Every time we saw a wave of Locusts, we saw...
during the last defense. When Classic was
then I think he should have gone for the big wave, especially because at one point Classic was running out of Storms. And all that he had were two Archons, but one was in the front, one was in the back. And Immortals are obviously not great units against Locusts, but I think he was under a lot of pressure. I think he was still microing Hydras on the top side of the map as well. He had to worry about those new Zealots running in, getting on top of the last few Hydras that he had. Either way, let's see if things will go better here in Game 2 for Nerchio, who once again, this is his third global finals in a row. His record at the global finals is 1-4. He was able to defeat Solar 2 years ago in a ZVZ series. Last year he was in a very tough group together with Rogue, Neep and Sue. He did not win a series in that group, but I'm sure he would love to do things differently this year. no matter how he does, 3 years in a row, making it into the top 16 here at the Global Finals, that is already a very, very impressive achievement.
I'm sure his bank account doesn't mind too much, yeah. Doing pretty well on that side of things. But yeah, Nerchio used to be considered one of the absolute best non-Korean players. Once upon a time, alongside Stefano, he was very high up there. Nowadays, definitely a little bit lower, but the fact that he's still relevant, the fact that he's still here at the Global Finals is still very impressive in itself. And is still extremely good. He did scout the Robo, I think it was around Natural here a second ago.
Yeah, it's kind of what Artosis said as well, right? You don't really feel the hype around Nerchio right now, because Nerchio has been consistent this year, but normally he peaks at 1 or 2 tournaments, and you see him at least in a semi-final, if not in a final. And that's just the performance that has been missing this year coming out of Nerchio. We know that he's capable of it. It's just been a little while, so it would be awesome for him to at least push Classic here to 3 games and show us that he belongs here. This is the stage where he belongs.
I think when the Lurker and Hydra meta was doing really well, that's when Nerchio was like really good in this matchup. But now everybody has gotten so good against this. Like a lot of Protosses, they make it look like a foolish idea to go for Lurkers and Hydralis. They just storm everything. They got their Immortals perfectly positioned. They hit the right Revelations.
Man, Nerchio's Hydra Dance are so quick. It's like 440 and he just throws it down. I mean, it's not something that's super uncommon, because obviously if you just fire up that lair at 340, you can get it done, but it's very different if you compare this to a Zero game where you often see a Rogue Warren against the Protoss, and you just see somebody try to get some more value out of those tier 1 units. Nerchio is not about that Roach Link business, and it's all about trying to get Hydras out as quickly as possible.
Ooh, Storm already starting. So not gonna get into any kind of Archon shenanigans here. Gonna work his way up to Storm here, Will Classic, pretty quickly in this game. I wonder if Nerchio will go again for Swarmos. I feel like, honestly, that wasn't the problem last game. Actually, that's kind of what made him do well in the first place. So I would like to see him go Swarmos maybe again, because on this map, if you set up towards the bottom as well, you can choose where you go. Like, you can fly those Locusts into the main base, and for Protoss, it's going to be very hard to defend appropriately.
It's a decent map for Lurkus though as well, right? Maybe some good old Hydra, Link, Bane, and then eventually Lurkus. But I think that Nerchio is most likely trying to just get an economic advantage somewhere. Phoenix is gonna live the Queen, Oracle is gonna swing in, gets 3 drones, but ends up losing the Phoenix. So what I would love to see now from Nerchio is immediately send out an Overlord of 2 or even 3, spread them around the map, because you know that Phoenix is gone, and that's pretty much the only real anti-air that Classic is currently working with.
Yeah.
Double Robo, by the way.
And also later, if he goes for some sort of drop, which on this map, I talked about the Locusts flying to the main base, a drop could be a big deal as well. Look at these 2 pylons here. They're asking to get sniped.
The Artosis and the Tasteless Pylon. The top one is Artosis, but he's getting backed up by Tassels, so it's all good. 7 more drones in the way. Nerchio's just playing an economic game from this point on. Just try to get those Hydras out as quickly as possible to make sure he doesn't take too much damage from Oracles or War Prism Arras. But Classic is just getting into that double Robo very quickly, and he just wants to get a lot of Storm and a lot of Immortals. And it seems that Classic is just approaching this like, yeah, if I get the army that I want, which consists of maybe a cheeky Sentry or 2 for some Guardian Shield and a few Force Fields, then a bunch of Storms and a couple of Archons, I'm always going to be fine against you.
Yeah, especially like when he hits the right Revelations, it's always so easy for him to take a very, very good fight in terms of landing the Storms and setting up the fight. Goes for an Observer now.
Overlord speed.
Some cannons.
Overlord speed is almost done, Johan. And I'd love to see some of that Dropalord play that you mentioned. There is once again an Infestation Pit going down. But I want to see more coming out of Nerchio. I want to see like a real attempt in trying to do some sick damage somewhere, because he's playing a rather slow game. And if Nerchio would be the overwhelming favorite here, I'd be like, yeah, you know, that's fine. Drag it out, because the longer the game goes, the better it is for you. But I don't really think that's the case here when you go up against Classic.
Maybe he looks at it in a way where he's like, last game I was doing well, just the defense against his final attack was not there. So if I do the same and I get myself in the same position, this time I'll defend better and I'll be able to win. And I mean, it might be just right. Like this time the Krish spread wasn't pushed back at all, like in the previous game. That's going to help a lot as well.
How do you feel about the way that Nerchio chooses his upgrades? He doesn't get... Well, this time he's double Evo, right? Last game he was single Evo, now he's getting +1
and last
melee.
game he only got +1 melee, that was it.
Yep.
He didn't even go for the +2 for the banelings or anything.
Maybe if he would have had a couple missile attacks upgrades, those Hydras would have actually done a lot better on creep in sniping down those Archons and Immortals.
And look, you talked about it, by the way, the Phoenix being gone. There's overlords everywhere on the map, especially at the top side. That's going to be very helpful to spot any kind of war prism going around, and he's still adding more.
Look at how passive Classic is playing this game. He's just like, you want to play Swarmers against me? That's fine. I'm just going to get a lot of Storms. I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to deal with your wave of Locusts. So now the big question is, can Nerchio find an opening somewhere with maybe Locust on the top side and Hydra Link Bane into the natural? But Classic is almost giving an open invitation to Nerchio. Like, you want to attack me? Go ahead and try your luck. Because I think I'm pretty ready for it.
You know what this kind of game reminds me of is Wings of Liberty, Daybreak a little bit, you know? Kind of split the map, wait for a long time. Obviously there is no more Archon toilets.
That's probably a good thing,
old
though.
days.
That's probably a good thing. So extra Stargates being thrown down, +1 air weapon, so there's a good chance that eventually we'll get to see carriers, but first, Classic obviously needs to survive against the Hydra, Ling, Bane, Swarmos composition. Since Classic is so spread out, I would love to see Nerchio just attack all through one path right now. Yes, there are a couple of storms, but this Zerg army is pretty freaking big.
Yeah, he's trying to siege that fourth base there, but Classic moves back the units that he had in the main base onto that location. And so far, so good for the Protoss player, defensively wise. And again, this is the one timing here where War Prism across the map could be so scary, because he's getting siege on his side of the map. Huge Stasis trap on the natural here, blocking some of the units. The Banelings and Lings sneak into that third base and kill a lot of these probes. 17 probes just died.
17 probes is awesome, but it wasn't for free, right? A lot of Banelings were used in that attack. A lot of Zerglings went down in the process as well. And since Classic is already getting ready to head into those carriers soon, he's still on 55 probes. Sure, it hurts to lose that many probes, but I think I'm okay with it. If I'm Classic, I'll be like, well, is that everything? You know, it's only gonna get easier for me from now on, because this Protoss army will keep on growing.
Oh, he brought back the Prism. He's just gonna do a big attack at the front here with this massive army. There's so many Immortals. Those Item Plus have so much energy as well. The army of Nerchio is already bruised. A bunch of storms landed on top of these Hydralisks. This army is so scary. 102 army supply to 1 in 12.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that Nerchio is going to get a good fight here. I mean, maybe if the Banelings can somehow connect with the High Templars, or maybe the wave of Locusts. I mean, this is it, Nerchio. If you're ever going to get a good fight, it's here on creep. Banelings will crash into all of these Immortals, do a lot of damage, but the storms are just completely destroying these Hydras on the north side. Nerchio's supply has been falling very quickly, and Classic still seems to be standing very strong. Yo, and I think this could very well be it.
Yeah, some Hydralisk tries to dive here onto those High Templars, but Classic is marching towards victory here. His army still with so many Immortals and Archons, with these High Templars building up on their energy. He can reinforce straight into the core of his army thanks to the War Prism that's being protected by everything here.
Yep, game 1 looked a little bit messy and perhaps a tiny bit sloppy as well from Classic, but in game 2 here, this is utter domination so far. I love the way that Classic played it. He had a perfect read on the strategy of Nerchio, and he's like, you want to play this kind of a game? That's okay, I'm very comfortable in just making Immortals, getting a bunch of High Templars out, and he has really dominated this game, if you ask me.
Yeah, Nerchio is trying to stay alive. Nerchio right now, this timer on these Locusts, they feel like an eternity.
I mean, a hatchery goes down, a few more Hydras will come in from the north side. Classic is finally running out of storms, but he has pretty much killed everything. Ooh, that War Prism did take a lot of damage from that Spore Crawler. I mean, Nerchio is still hanging in there supply-wise, but guys, he was up 40, 50 supply before. So that obviously tells you the tale that he's down right now is very bad. And it's not like we're getting close to Broodlords or Lurkers with adaptive talents. No, it's more of the same, and that's never a good sign for Zerg.
Yeah, and Classic plays it safe. He just recalls with everything. He's just gonna regroup, reinforce a little bit, let some of these High Templars build up on energy, and then go for, I think, another potential final push, which, I mean, I don't see how Nerchio could hold at this stage. The soup does not lie in this game.
Do you think that game 1 has bothered Nerchio a lot coming into game 2, and that he really felt that that should have been his game and he should have been up 1-0? Because game 1 looked pretty good, but game 2 looked a little lackluster to me. I didn't really see the plan to win anywhere, right? Like, it just felt that Classic had a perfect read on the build of Nerchio, and he's just like, oh, you're gonna do the same thing. Well, I'll make sure that this time it won't get close, and it really feels like it never did.
Yeah, this is almost the worst kind of game to lose, like the one that slips away, the one that you feel you're in control and that you should have won, because you're gonna be going to the next map with a lot of regret and with your mind filled with those thoughts of what you have done wrong in the previous one. So I feel definitely it might have affected him, and we're just seeing a poor version of the build that he did last game here in this one.
Yeah, and also a classic that's much... Oh, he stormed this on Prism! And obviously it took a little bit of damage from those Hydras as well. I think 2 Archons were inside of it, right? So kind of an expensive loss there, but as you always say, the soup does not lie. Classic is fine. Classic can afford a misclick or 2 at this point, because this Protoss army is just insane.
I was gonna say, he has so many Zealots, he should send some at the bottom to try and attack those right-hand side bases. Maybe even do the same thing on the left, but he's in just such a good spot here.
I love how he has +1 air weapons, but he never really used his Stargates. I mean, he's getting a mothership now, and that's obviously cool.
What would it take for Nerchio to win the upcoming fight?
Classic to alt-tab, open YouTube, watch a video or 2, and hope that storms...
Move command his army into like mass banelings. Even that, I think.
I just have a hard time. This Protoss army has an insane amount of HP. And once again, Nerchio's army is very strong when it hits quickly, and you know, when Protoss isn't totally ready yet, when you're low on storms, when the immortal count isn't that high. I look at his army and I'm just like, geez Louise. I mean, Banelings can obviously turn a fight around, Locusts can turn a fight around, but the way that Classic handled the previous fights, I have a hard time believing that he's gonna mess this up.
Alright, Nerchio, jump on top of this army, because Classic was far out on the creep, but I don't think he cares too much. Lands some massive storms here on top of everything.
I mean, look at the bank as well, right? Nerchio is broke as a joke, and Classic is close to being maxed out, and he still has money in the bank. A couple of Zealots are harassing on the right side. This is the Classic that I expected and hoped to see as well coming into the global finals. We've got a lot of awesome Protoss players here, Johan, but I believe this man is going to make a very deep run.
Yeah, Classic marching towards victory here with this huge army of his, these Immortals that's just been there the whole time. It's the same ones too. I feel like he's barely lost any one of them.
They're living up to their names.
Hasn't had to replenish on Immortal counts.
Picked up those High Templars as well. Mothership starts showing up. At this point, Nerchio knows it. The writing is on the wall. GG. Classic takes a pretty convincing 2-0 victory in the opening match of Group D.
Very impressive throughout. That first game was kind of close. That second one, not so much. And we expect no less from the GSL Super Tournament recent winner. Remember last year, that was Rogue and he won the whole thing here at BlizzCon, so I'm sure Classic is hoping history repeats itself here.
Yeah, just look good, right? Maybe a couple jitters coming into game 1, you know, it can obviously be scary, and a couple misclicks, but from that point forward, I mean, this man looked good. Curious to see what the boys on the couch have to say about the performance of Classic.
All the guys here look good as well. Thank you very much, Roddy, as we do have Classic moving forwards with the 2-0. Very well done by him. And joining me, of course, Hartosis, Mr. Tasteless, Mr. Maynard. Guys, it really felt like Classic throughout that 2-game series as a whole really kind of just refined his play as the series went on in a very short space of time.
Yeah, Todd and Roddy actually brought it up nicely how Classic looked really solid in game 2, and then game 1 was a little bit shaky. There was actually a lot of hope there for Nerchio in that game, but Classic just picked the right fight, man. He was losing bases back on the other side of the map, but his composition was perfect. Lots of Immortals. The Warp Prism actually just arrived in time as well to like save, you know, an Archon here and a couple of Immortals there, and Immortals and Warp Prisms, man. An iconic duo.
Yeah.
I heard they're pretty good.
Yeah. No, I mean it was a great series. Honestly, in game 1, Nerchio looked really good. It's just too bad. Game 2 was actually not bad as well. I mean, I think you know, I guess, you know, this is the English broadcast, so there's always kind of us rooting a little bit for the non-Korean players, but we're really seeing this theme overall here where the players outside of Korea are actually looking pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Nerchio did look really good in that game 1. Could have possibly taken it down.
Yeah.
So I think that Nerchio brought some good play for this tournament, but something else is Classic going to show his top form PvZ, and especially in that game 2, I think so.
When you look back at game number 1, was it one of two things? Was it Classic just making the fantastic recovery, or was it Nerchio kind of slipping a little bit in that?
I think it was the sharp attack from Classic. I think that was 100% Classic. You know, Nerchio got into a place where it's like, oh, he's going to win this game. That's so sick. Win game 1 against Classic. But And then Classic just taking the army he had and making it do wonders. That was definitely him.
We can talk more about it in a second. For now, let's head over to the interview as Hutchinson is ready with Classic.
Thank you, James. After a rather bumpy start, Classic was able to close this series 2-0, so congratulations. Let's talk about the game. Like the game one, it started off like it was a bit scary, but when did you know you could win this game? 우선 축하드립니다. 이제 1세트 때 약간 좀 실수도 나오고 되게 불리한 상황에서도 1세트를 가져가셨어요. 언제 내가 진짜 이거 이길 수 있다라고 생각하셨나요?
우선 블리츠컨 이제 16강이다 보니까 좀 긴장을 해가지고 초반에 실수를 많이 했는데 솔직히 끝날 때까지 제가 이겼다라고 생각을 못했어요. 그냥 되게 불리해서 천천히 따라가자라는 생각으로 했는데 네, 결과가 좋았던 것 같네요.
So this is global final, so I was a bit nervous and that's why I made a lot of mistakes. And still until the end of the game, I actually didn't know that I could win this series, the first game. And you get very calm till the end. And even in the GSL Super Tournament, you were able to reverse sweep twice. So do you have any secret for that? How do you keep that calm? 이제 정말 침착한 선수 같은데 이제 GSL 슈터 때도 역수입을 2번이나 하셨어요. 그리고 우승까지 차지하셨는데 약간 김도우 선수만의 비밀이 있나요?
원래는 제가 올해 초까지만 해도 병렬이한테 4대0 당한 것처럼 좀 초반에 무너지면 계속 무너지는 스타일이었는데 아마 그 경기 이후로 조금은 제 생각으로는 좀 침착하자라는 그런 생각을 가지고 있어가지고 그냥 맨날 지고 있으면 뭐 4대0 당하지 말자, 3대0 당하지 말자 이런 생각으로 경기 하나하나씩 좀 이렇게 해 나가는 게 좀 비결인 것 같아요.
Actually, earlier this year, I got 4-0'd by ROG in Katowice. And after that, I decided to focus on each game and said, okay, let's just not get 4-0'd, just let's take my time and play every game and focus on it. And that's how I'm able to keep calm. And you know what? You're the oldest player playing in this tournament. So how do you feel? What does it mean to you? 이번 월드 챔피언십 글로벌 파이널에서 제일 나이가 많은 선수세요. 이제 좀 더 남보다 약간 각오도 남다를 것 같은데 그거에 대해서 한마디 부탁드립니다.
네, 아무래도 나이가 이제 많다 보니까 기회가 많이 없을 것 같고 지금이 이제 제 생각으로는 거의 마지막 기회라고 생각을 하고 있기 때문에 이번 블리츠컨이 저에게서는 굉장한 동기부여도 됐고 남들보다 더 의욕이 많기 때문에 이번엔 꼭 우승을 하고 싶어요.
So indeed, I'm the oldest player here, and BlizzCon is a huge. I honestly think it's my last opportunity here. So this is really important for me, and this is why I'm more motivated than anyone else. So I really want to win this. So thank you so much. Great talking to you. Congratulations again, and good luck in the winners match. And back to you guys.
Thank you very much. High hopes for Classic coming into this tournament, I think, from a lot of us here. And, that first series, as much as the first game was a little bit of a blip, still managing to win it. Good stuff moving through into the winners game.
Yeah, and that is definitely going to be a big test for him if Rogue is able to defeat Special. That is a tough matchup, I think, overall for Classic. Rogue, I think everyone would agree, is a level up above Nerchio. So, a blip like Game 1, that's going to go Rogue's way, most likely.
Another thing to point out, too, is, with all these interesting narratives that we have, it's easy to overlook Classics, but the truth is this actually might be his last shot to become the world champion.
Yeah.
It's not easy when you retire, in this case, because you have to do your military service in South Korea. It's not easy to leave the scene and then come back and make the same kind of mark. So this is a really, really big deal for him. And let's not forget, if he's limited, this may be the end of his story.
I really like what you're saying there, too. If you look at his career, it has been illustrious. Okay, I want to remind people that this guy was a StarCraft 1 pro gamer 10 years ago. He was literally the #1 draft pick. Didn't really have a big career in that. Came to StarCraft 2, he's a GSL champion, he's an SSL champion, he's an IM champion. He's hit, 2 top 4s at BlizzCon, he's gotten to plenty of finals, he just won Super Tournament.
Absolutely.
That's all great, but it's not the world champion. If you're the oldest pro, you're thinking about going to the Army, a win here for Classic, and this is the year he's most likely to do it, I think. Like, he's the highest rank he's ever been at BlizzCon, in my opinion, as far as actual skill goes. It's super important to him right now.
I mean, whoever won that super tournament coming in, it's like the most fresh tournament coming in, right? So that was really impactful for him as well. And I suppose, you know, you guys were theorizing a Classic versus Rogue. It's like every single match we have here in the group stages, especially the winners games, are basically a Premier Tournament final. That's how the quality that we're seeing here through even just the group stages.
And no surprises, this is the global finals. This is the playoffs, you know, and it's only just going to get better and better and more intense as we go forward. You know, some of the best games of StarCraft we're going to see yet to happen here, and even the storylines yet to happen. I'm really, really excited. I really hope that with Classic's mindset of, you know, with that military service looming over him, I wonder. Hopefully he's not going to put too much stress on himself and really put pressure on himself to make something happen before the inevitable. But sometimes when you have that kind of looming over you, you instead get into that zen place of what else